Gladiators were the rock stars of their day, but there was also a social stigma attached to their existence. They were slaves who embodied some of the greatest virtues held by Roman society, but their status didn't stop women in Rome from desiring gladiator sex or from gladiator sweat as an aphrodisiac as they tried to satisfy their lust for the fierce, manly fighters. Needless to say, when it came to sex in ancient Rome, gladiators were in an interesting position literally and figuratively. Our knowledge of sexuality throughout history is based on archaeological evidence such as sexual graffiti as well as the works of contemporary writers. Fortunately, there's plenty of evidence to show us what it was like both for the gladiators and those looking to find a way into their tunics. Before we start, be sure to subscribe and click on the bell so you don't miss new videos. This is the channel Learning the World. Let's go! Despite their appeal, gladiators were akin to sex workers on the social ladder. In Roman society, gladiators had very little standing. Not all gladiators were slaves or prisoners, just most of them, especially when the gladiatorial tradition began, but the freemen who sold themselves into gladiatorial combat were also in the lower social strata. Gladiators were on the same level as other men and women who sold their services, namely actors and those in the sex industry, putting them in a unique position. Gladiators were considered brave, achieved fame for their victories, and were lusted after by women, while simultaneously shunted off to the outskirts of propriety. Crowds admired gladiators for facing their mortality, but, at the most basic level, gladiators were regarded by polite Roman society as little more than laborers, paid and revered for their willingness to risk their lives. The sweat and blood of gladiators was sold as an aphrodisiac. The fluids that came from gladiators were hot commodities in Rome. Gladiator sweat was used as perfume and as a beauty treatment. It was even collected into pots and sold as souvenirs. The blood of gladiators was also used as an aphrodisiac. On her wedding night, a young woman might have her hair parted using a sword dipped in the blood of a deceased gladiator to make sure that her married life was long and fruitful. Roman graffiti tells the story of gladiator fangirling. At Pompeii, archaeologists discovered graffiti that offers insight into how Romans felt about their favorite gladiators. In the gladiator barracks, one inscription reads, "Floronius, privileged soldier of the 7th Legion, was here." The women did not know of his presence. Only 6 women came to know, too few for such a stallion. Another says, Antiochus hung out here with his girlfriend Cythera, indicating that gladiators, in fact, had girlfriends. 2 inscriptions, Celadus the Thracian gladiator is the delight of all the girls and Celadus the Thracier makes the girls moan, also seem to make it very clear that Celadus was quite the fighter and the lady pleaser. It's unclear who wrote these lines, though perhaps Celadus just wanted to leave a good reputation behind. Emperor Commodus was rumored to have been fathered by a gladiator. According to 2 Roman historians, Herodian and Dio Cassius, the wife of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, known as Faustina the Younger, was so attracted to a gladiator she saw during a parade of combatants that she actually fell ill. She told her husband about the man, and Aurelius consulted soothsayers to see what he should do to ease his wife's passion. They told him that the gladiator should be executed while Faustina was underneath him, covering her with his blood. It seems as though the gladiator was supposed to be engaging in intercourse with Faustina at the time. After he perished, she was then to immediately have relations with her husband. Whether or not the story is true, it highlights the almost magical powers attributed to gladiator blood as well as the intense sexuality they embodied. Their son Commodus, who went on to become emperor, may have, in fact, had gladiator blood in his veins. He preferred participating in gladiatorial combat to being emperor, often fighting physically disabled people or animals while on a raised platform. Roman women used gladiators as bodyguards. Hiring a gladiator as a bodyguard wasn't a bad idea. Having a retired or off-duty trained warrior to protect you makes sense. This would have been a lucrative endeavor for the gladiator, too. Gladiators protected elite Romans when they traveled or were employed to keep military troops in line. Women seized on the phenomenon of hiring gladiators for other reasons, however. According to Philip Madisak, author of the Gladiator's Manual, many a wealthy lady who hires gladiator bodyguards for the night does so in expectation of her body being guarded very closely indeed. Female gladiators were given less armor to show off their bodies. Female gladiators, or gladiatrix, weren't as common as their male counterparts. They were actually banned in 200 BCE, but when they did make their way to the ring, they were highly sexualized. Female gladiators wore loincloths, as opposed to the tunics men wore, and were not given helmets, presumably to show off their faces and hairstyles. Fights featuring female gladiators represented the pinnacle of luxury and indulgence, often presented at private parties held by the Roman elite. Archaeological evidence indicates that women used the same weapons as men, however. One statue believed to depict a female gladiator features a bare-chested woman holding a sicca, a short, curved sword associated with a type of gladiator known as a Thraex or Thracian. Gladiators could be hired out as male escorts. In a lot of ways, gladiators lost the ability to control their bodies, either as slaves or freemen who voluntarily became fighters. In spite of this, the prospect of sexual relations wasn't always unappealing. Gladiators were expected to take advantage of opportunities to use their bodies as instruments of carnal lust, and some may have seen it as a perk of the job. Gladiator combat was based in erotic beauty. There were several types of gladiators, the distinctions based in their chosen types of weaponry and tactics, but the most beautiful gladiators were held in high esteem. When the opponents for a gladiator were chosen, their beauty was also taken into account. Ugliness ruined the erotic fascination with viciousness, while beauty simultaneously emphasized the pain of mortality. Juvenal satirized the attention gladiators got from the ladies. In his satire The Sixth, 2nd century Roman poet Juvenal lambasted women, commenting on their lack of morality and decaying virtue in an effort to keep his friend from getting married. The work, often considered to be a misogynist rant, includes a story about Eppia, the wife of a Roman senator who left her husband for a gladiator. Juvenal asked his audience, and what were the youthful charms which captivated Eppia? What did she see in him to allow herself to be called a she-gladiator? Her dear Sergius had already begun to shave, a wounded arm gave promise of a discharge, and there were sundry deformities in his face, a scar caused by the helmet, a huge one upon his nose, a nasty humor always trickling from his eye. But then he was a gladiator. It is this that transforms these fellows. It was this that she preferred to children and to country, to sister and to husband. Eppia and Sergius eventually went off together to Egypt. This example of a woman giving her wealth up for the man she loved could be seen as inspiring, but with Juvenal's treatment, it was just another example of how awful women were in Juvenal's opinion anyway. Gladiatorial combat got Roman spectators all riled up. During the imperial period, Roman noblewomen became increasingly interested in getting close to gladiators. According to Ovid, the best place to meet a Roman woman was actually at gladiatorial games because there were always so many present. He described the romantic atmosphere around gladiatorial combat in Ars Amatoria, and the circus brings assistance to new love, and the scattered sand of the gladiator's ring. The newsy boy often fights in that sand, and who see wounds, themselves receive a wound. While talking, touching hands, checking the program, and asking, having bet, which one will win, wounded he groans, and feels the winged dart, and himself becomes a part of the show he sees. For men and women alike, gladiators were quite the aphrodisiac. To try to combat flirting and the potential wandering eye, Augustus moved women to the upper level of the amphitheater in Rome, but it didn't do much to eliminate jealousy at the games. The retiarius was considered an effeminate gladiator. The retiarius, a gladiator fighting with equipment resembling that of a fisherman, was the least armed combatant in the arena. Armed with a trident, a dagger, and a net, a retiarius wore nothing but a loincloth, a belt, and a minimal amount of armor. He was considered inferior to other gladiators, and there was an aspect of homosexuality and effeminacy to his presentation. In his satire, The Second and Satire the Eighth, Juvenal described Gracchus, a man who disgraced himself by becoming the male bride to a horn player. That was not Gracchus's most embarrassing action, however, it was when he fought as a retiarius by choice and did so badly. He missed the throw of his net and was forced to run for his life. According to Juvenal, even Gracchus's opponent was ashamed to be fighting against him. A retiarius fought against a secutor, a chaser who carried a shield and sword while wearing armor specifically designed to withstand the retiarius's weapons. That's all for today. If you liked the video, put a like and don't forget to subscribe. Bye everyone.